Hello, I'm Sarah Galashan. We're live in Vancouver. The Prime Minister is now in Washington ahead of his critical meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. Mark Carney's arrival comes as Trump once again repeats his threat of annexation. You're watching Hannah Mansing tonight.
If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us.
I go there with the expectation of constructive, difficult, but constructive discussion.
A former Canadian diplomat joins us live to discuss what's at stake in his first meeting between Carney and Trump.
For Albertans, these attacks on our province by our own federal government have become unbearable.
Alberta's premier outlines her priorities for the new federal government and addresses lingering questions about separatism. Prime Minister Mark Carney has arrived in Washington ahead of his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump tomorrow. The two world leaders will come face to face before the cameras in the Oval Office for the very first time. Carney wants to set the stage for negotiations of a broad economic and security agreement between Canada and the United States. Earlier today, Donald Trump told reporters he's not sure why Carney wants to see him, but that he assumes it's to make a deal. Just yesterday, Trump revived his 51st state rhetoric in an interview with NBC. We're going to check in with Ashley Burke, who is traveling with the Prime Minister in just a moment. First, though, I want to bring in CBC's Aaron Collins, who's following U.S. reaction to Carney's visit. So, Aaron, we heard from Trump earlier today. What did he have to say?
Hey, Sarah. Yeah, life in Washington, right? It's anything but predictable these days. So today's announcement, it was supposed to be about the NFL draft coming to D.C., but as they often do with this administration, things, they quickly turn, right? They take a turn. Trump asked about what he was expecting to emerge from his meetings with Prime Minister Carney tomorrow. You mentioned that. And despite the president having lots to say about Canada, in recent weeks and months, didn't have much to say today about tomorrow's meeting with the Prime Minister. Have a listen.
I don't know if he's coming to see me. I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does. They all want to make a deal because we have something that they all want. We have something that they all want. China wants to make a deal very badly. You see what's happening to China? China's being decimated, and I don't want that to happen. But they have to make a fair deal.
So a fair deal, whatever that looks like, and likely not a deal that's going to be easy to hammer out. Sarah, have a listen to Trump's own Trade Secretary Howard Lutnick on that.
I think it's really complex. I think this is really complex because they have been basically feeding off of us for decades upon decades upon decades, right? They have their socialist regime, and it's basically feeding off of America. I mean, the president calls that out all the time. Why do we make cars in Canada? Why do we do our films in Canada? Come on. So I think the president's going to have, I think it's going to be a fascinating meeting. I'm glad I'm going to be there listening, but it's going to be a fascinating meeting tomorrow. I just don't see how it works out so perfectly.
But you're not going to bust up USMCA. That deadline is next year for the final review.
Correct. So next year is coming. So a lot of things are going to be put into that.
So if it's USMCA compliant, you're okay.
I think for now it's okay, but I think what you should expect to see is a real revisiting of USMCA.
So a fascinating set of meetings coming up, to be sure, no matter what negotiations look like. It's safe to say that trade is going to be very high up on the agenda for those meetings.
Now, we have heard Trump make some 51st state comments.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, that's right. So this came up again in today's meeting about the NFL draft as well. The president was asked if he only wanted Canada in order to make the U.S. the biggest country in the world. He kind of laughed that off, but he took a more serious tone when addressing it during an interview on Meet the Press on Sunday. The president continuing to push the idea that Canada could become the 51st state. The good news, I suppose, he still seems to be ruling out an invasion. Have a listen to the president from that Meet the Press interview.
I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not with
I think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
So, Sarah, obviously Canadian sovereignty is going to be on the agenda for tomorrow's visit with Prime Minister Carney. That and ongoing the trade dispute that Canada and the U.S. are sort of in the midst of, likely to dominate discussions here in Washington tomorrow.
CBC's Aaron Collins in Washington. Thank you.